I'm Tom Hibbert and welcome to Winning Strength Online, and today we're going to go through 6 tips to help you stop hopping backwards on your push press. Tip number 1 is you need some sort of feedback. So what I use is a line on the floor. If we look here, I line up my toes here, I will clean, say, the log, and then do the push press, and then when I finish my set, I can see where I've landed. You want to make sure that you're focusing not just on your work sets, but also on your warm-up sets. You want every rep to be perfect. The more reps you do without hopping back and focusing on it, the better your technique's going to be in the long run. So if you're not focusing on it, you're not going to get any better. So line up your toes on a line, whether you have to use a line on the board or you get a chalk line and put it down. You need that line for feedback so you can see at the end of every set whether you're hopping back or not. Tip number 2, after you've set up your line, this is the most important technical tip, okay? When you've done your dip, as you come through into the leg drive, you don't just want to contract your quads. If you contract your quads, you hop back. If we contract quads and hips, i.e. we get hips through, we create an upward force which will push the log or barbell up, straight up, and you will stop jumping back. Tip number 3 really complements tip number 2. So again, one of the reasons people hop back is they're very quad dominant. Quad dominant is just polite for saying glute or posterior chain weak. So what you want to do is increase your strength at your end range posterior chain movements. So as you're here, what movements will strengthen up that? In that position specifically, we're looking at flat back extension, reverse hyperextension, incline back extension, and all those hip extension movements. You want to not just add them in for repetitions, say 3 sets of 10 to 12. You also want to look at 3 singles or 3 sets of 1 where you're isometrically holding for maximal effort. So what I tend to do is it would be anywhere from 10 to 20 second holds where you're going to be holding the back extension there for a maximal weight. Tip number 4 is to use a complementing movement pattern but make it less demanding, i.e. remove the overhead movement. Again, set your line up, and then the movement pattern's obviously from there and up, there and up. So we could look at things like high pull, or we could look at jumps. But by removing the overhead using the line, you can practice that movement and make sure you're not obviously hopping back. Tip number 5, it's 1 step on from the last tip of number 4, but it's regress the push press. The 2 movements I like for this are a paused push press or a blast press. So the paused push press, you would do your clean or you'd unrack, you would hold this for a 2 to 4 second count and then drive in. The reason that's easier is when it's there, sometimes you forget the cue of pushing your hips through and squeezing your glutes. You've forgotten the cue, therefore you're not going to be able to perfect it. Blast press is what you would do off the rack, so you would have the bar or the log resting on safeties. From that position, drive up from a dead stop. The 6th and final tip I'm going to give you today is to add bands to the movement. The reason being is if your line or your technique is off when you've got a band around, say, a log push press, it's very unforgiving. So if we have, imagine the bands are on here, if we jump back and you're essentially having the log forward, the band's going to be pulling you down at a point where you are really going to struggle to pull that log back. So adding bands, even to your maximal work, really highlights if your technique is inefficient or not. So adding bands to maximal work is going to be of benefit and not just on your speed strength work. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video on how to prevent hopping back in your push press. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you want more information and more training programs to help you with your training for strength, please check out the Winning Strength Online platform.